Hello, everyone, and hey, Jake. Thanks for joining me today.
Hello,
Um,
hello.
yeah. So a little bit of housekeeping. We are going to record this. I like to dilly dally a little so folks have time to show up. So I'll just kind of ramble for at least 2 minutes. So we are going to record this. No, no need to like furiously screenshot or screen record or whatever. We will release the recording. You'll get an email after this with the recording that you can share with colleagues and whatnot. um, Excuse me, another bit of housekeeping. As a host, I do a terrible job trying to view comments and chat and also view questions and everything. So what I like to do is go ahead and enter your questions in the questions tab. There should be down below a tab specifically for questions versus chat. Um, so we will leave time at the end to do a Q&A, and I'll start with the questions that are in that tab. So if questions come up while we're talking, go ahead and enter them there. If we answer them, I think there's a way to delete. So if we answer it during the session later or something like that, you can go ahead and delete it so we don't cover something that was already covered. Yeah, and that's about it. So I wanted to introduce Jake Moore. He's the CEO of Superwall. And so what we're going to do, Jake has put together this fantastic slide deck on building great paywalls that sell. And so we're going to go through it. And then, as he goes through it, you probably have a million questions pop into your head. And I already have a ton of questions for him. So I'm going to try and be your voice asking him questions as we go through. And then again, we'll answer even more questions at the end. So without further ado, Jake, let's get rolling. If you want to go ahead and share your screen and talk to us about paywalls.
For sure. Thanks for the awesome intro, David. Alrighty. So today, I would like to talk to you about building paywalls that win. I'm going to show you best practices for iterating towards better, more effective paywalls. A bit more about me. My name is Jake. Before founding Superwall with two amazing co-founders, Brian and Justin, I founded a company called Fitness AI. It was an iOS app that told you exactly what to do at the gym. I grew Fitness AI to around 2 million in revenue. It was a top 50 grossing health and fitness app in the country. I handled all engineering, design, and growth on my own. And I did that mainly by building a lot of internal tools, kind of like Superwall. So the first thing I learned while building Fitness AI was that growing apps is all about optimizing funnels, whether it's from add to install, from install to onboarded, paid to retained. From most people miss out on this last one. Once they're a user, you need to get them to share the app with their friends, and you need to get each user to leave a review. If you break these out into standalone processes and figure out ways to optimize them, then you'll win. Again, today we're going to talk mainly about how to get users to go from install to paid. That's the mission of Superwall. And whether you use Superwall or decide to take these tactics and build them your own the same way I did with Fitness AI, that totally works. The principles still apply. So the thing is that users rarely subscribe to your app without a good paywall. And the reason is because they haven't used your app yet. They don't know who you are or if they can trust you, and they don't know what you do, right? So how could you ask someone to pay you without getting this in their head? Most apps do it by going through the freemium model. So you give parts of your app away for free, or you let them tinker and play around with your app. But the truth is, a fantastic paywall is a better solution.
Yeah, I wanted to interrupt you there. Where do you think the balance is? Because it does seem for some apps, freemium can help demonstrate the value even better than a paywall. If you get to really experience the value of an app, that can actually potentially even sell better than a really great paywall. Where do you think that balance is? Are there specific apps you think should maybe lean more heavily on freemium? Or do you think this really is more universal?
Absolutely. The most important thing is getting to a user to an aha moment as quickly as possible. And so however many users you lose to get some users to that aha moment is your opportunity cost for building a fantastic paywall. So if you're losing out on 50% of your signups because they're not even reaching the aha moment, then it would make much more sense to add a paywall before the aha moment that at least describes what the app does in a really good way and tells them how much they have to pay to access that. The best app I've seen that gets to that aha moment really quickly is Photo Room. So in their onboarding experience, they literally make you add a photo and remove the background. So, something like 80 plus downloads probably experience that within the first minute. And then right after that, they get hit with the paywall. So it's really just comes down to that aha moment. The thing is, most new apps or apps in general, there's so much more work to do to get to that aha moment that it's such a hard thing to do that it's much easier to optimize your paywall to at least share what that thing is.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Really making me think.
So this begs the question: what makes a fantastic paywall? There are 5 key elements that we've zoned in on. So the first is your placement. So you want to make sure that your paywall is being shown at the right time. The second is that you're locking off the right features. So that's deciding if you're freemium, if you're pay to play, if you get 3 free workouts, etc. The third is pricing. So you want to make sure you're charging the amount that maximizes LTV for each of your users. The fourth is visuals that provide good context as to what you're providing. So a great example here is like the Blinkist free trial timeline that falls under the visuals category. And the last is copywriting. If you look at Com's paywall, there's just 5 bullet points on it. That's the famous paywall that took them to 100 million plus in revenue. And it's the reason they were able to get away with that is because their copywriting explains the why and not the what. So that's a common piece of advice that all marketers sort of live by. Each one of these we've been able to optimize on average by around 20%. That's like a baseline if you haven't optimized any of these things. And it sounds crazy, but the opportunity for optimizing all these things 20% is a 2 to 2x increase in revenue.
Wow.
Yep. So here's an example. Inside of Fitness AI, this was 2 years in. On August 16th of last year, I added a video paywall. So I added a video to my paywall and I moved the paywall to before onboarding. Right. So this is 2 years of optimizing in. This happened. Right. So this is sort of proof. And, Blinkist also proved to the free trial timeline. Doesn't matter how long you've been iterating. There's always that nugget of that gold that you find that can double your install to trial.
When you did this experiment specifically, I would assume that with the increase in install to trial that you would see kind of a commensurate drop in trial to paid. Was that the case in this trial?
No. So install to paid install to paid went up 2x as well.
Wow.
And this is crazy. And so there are 2 pieces here. So the first is we moved the paywall to before onboarding. So our onboarding completion rate at the time it floated between 60 and 70%. So moving that beforehand was a 50% relative increase, just number of people seeing the paywall. So you're going to get some gains there. The second is that we added a video to the paywall. So my hunch is that most people didn't know what they were buying when they got hit with the paywall right after onboarding, but adding the video sort of showed off exactly what the app does. And I could show you a demo of what.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So this is the paywall that we updated it with. You can see that the video. Sure. Maybe not.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
This is the paywall that we designed so it shows exactly what the app does. Users know exactly what they're getting. I think this is really important, especially if you're going to be aggressive with your paywall and show it off before they even get to play around with your app. And the truth is, a video can do a better job of walking a user through the app than just giving them access to it because they don't know how to use it.
Right.
So videos are probably the highest leverage thing that we recommend. And this doesn't need to be so clear cut, like with a device model, and you could just do a random video like this. This is a video editing app that a friend of mine created, and it just shows you like that you can make cool videos with it. And people sort of get it. This is the best performing paywall we've ever seen on our platform. There's like a 20% install to trial rate on this one.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Alrighty. So most tactics don't apply between apps in different categories, right? So for example, with health and fitness, there's a weird thing that happens in health and fitness where the more people who put their money where their mouth is actually end up going to the gym more. So every category is sort of different. All we can do is share what has worked in the past and the tests that we ran, and hopefully you can run those tests inside of your apps. So you absolutely must test these things for yourself.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because like in your previous explanation of how you had much higher trial conversion rates with that video paywall early on, I would imagine there's maybe like a little bit of like a kind of sunk cost of like of people who, once they start the free trial, they're actually more invested in trying to actually use the app and see if it's a good fit during that 7-day free trial. So, I mean, do you think that's maybe part of why those paywalls and putting the paywall so early actually worked in your specific case?
Absolutely. I think a common thing that app developers do is they underestimate how much intent is behind the install. So there's a user who downloaded your app because they specifically are experiencing some issue, and they did at least a minute of research, and they chose your app, and they're downloading it. And so you got to capture that demand.
Yeah, and capturing it early, to your point, is that if you wait until they go all the way through onboarding to show them the paywall, and only 50% of people are converting or are completing your onboarding, then you're missing an opportunity with 50% of these high intent installs to even show them the paywall.
Absolutely. And yeah, intent is fleeting.
Right.
People, they're really down to try out your solution, and they're like, I'd rather just go back on Instagram or something else. So you got to capture it.
Right.
And the thing with paywalls is you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. The number one metric that we focus on, that we see almost every app company not focusing on, is what percentage of your users are even seeing the paywall. And it is crazy. I mean, we see some apps doing 300-400K in revenue a month, up to a few million, where only around 20 to 30% of their installs even see the paywall. Right. So, I mean, that's crazy, right? 80% of people download your app and they use it, but they never even realize that there's a paid option.
Yeah.
And people feel bad when they're aggressive with their paywall, but the truth is you need money to invest into your app, and the user can also always exit it out. It's not like you're not forcing them or even, it's not as aggressive as you think. People are used to it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really great advice.
So what makes a fantastic paywall? Again, there's placement, features, pricing, visuals, and copy. Let's talk about placement. So these are your options. You can show before onboarding, after onboarding, before using a core feature, after using a core feature, and on every single app open. We recommend to show your paywall in all of these places, at least at first, because it's important to know what your opportunity is. So if you're the kind of person who thinks showing a paywall before onboarding is too aggressive, showing it after onboarding is too aggressive, the truth is it depends. Is it too aggressive if you're going to 3x your revenue and quit your job to work on your app full time? Not really. Right. So you have to know what you're missing out on. So at least run a test with all of these things. Do it for a few weeks just to see what happens. Then keep on removing ones until your conversion rate stabilizes and you're in a place where you feel comfortable, like you're not being too aggressive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great.
So the second is, what features are you going to, like, what are you going to feature gate? So there are two options here. You can paywall your best features with a freemium model, or you can paywall your entire app with a pay-to-play model. Usually when you're creating a new app, we recommend locking out your entire app. This usually does best. It's not for the reasons you might think. When you first launch your app is the worst it'll ever be. And when you have a user who's willing to pay for that app without ever trying it, right? Or at least starting a free trial, that user has such a huge problem in their life that they're willing to try this app, right? The shittiest version of your app, to see if it's a solution. And those are the exact kind of early users you want. Those are the people who you want to be building for. And so lock out your entire app, at least when you just start, and listen to your users and take their problems as gold and solve for them.
One of the things on freemium strategy that I've been thinking a lot about, and I'm curious to get your take, is that I think the tendency, and maybe the wording there, I'll challenge you on, is that locking your best features isn't always, and locking your best content. I wonder if sometimes that's actually a bad approach, depending on whether or not your best features and your best content have some level of like self-evident value. Because I think what I've struggled with in the past is like when I introduce a new feature in my app and I think it's, fantastic and the value's clear, but I think to the average user, and maybe, again, a video paywall can help with this, good copywriting can help with this. Like there's a lot that can help with this, but if it's something the user doesn't necessarily intuit value being there, or if they have to really experience it to get the value, I really struggle with like how to balance those kind of features when there are maybe technically your best features, but also maybe like need to be experienced. Like what are your thoughts on that?
Totally. Nothing is stopping you from, at least at the start, saying you need to at least start a free trial. Remember, they're not paying anything. They're just starting a free trial. Starting a free trial to unlock the entire app. And after a week, if they don't subscribe, send them a push notification and let them know that they can now use half the features for free.
Right.
You could move and jump around between these things to figure out what configuration works best. Also, there's another. This was a really good point that one of the founders of Fitbod made, which was if you have a set of features and you decide to, let's say you for your app to work, you need to charge $100 a year, right? If you go the freemium route and you decide that some features are free and some of them cost $100 a year, you're completely devaluing your free features. They're literally free. And you're saying that your best features are worth $100 a year. Whereas when you say that your entire app is worth $100 a year, you're not like placing your features above or below one another. And so there's no devaluing, and there's no like, maybe these specific features aren't worth $100 a year, but together they're worth $100 a year. I think it's an interesting way of thinking about it.
Yeah, that is.
It's also like if you still want to, like, instead of going freemium and feature gating half of your features, something that you can do that we've seen work pretty well, especially in Fitbod's case, is it's great. Like you can give away your entire app for free without starting a free trial through Apple, but just make it a usage-based limit. So you get, Photo Room might give you 3 free photos with premium exports available, or Fitness AI might give you 3 free workouts. Definitely don't do that with the free trial through Apple, though.
Right.
Oh, that's another thing. Usually with a freemium model, we see non-free trial products do better. Whereas if you feature gate your entire app, it almost always makes more sense to add a free trial, a timed free trial.
Right.
Okay, so third is pricing. So the trick with pricing is showing the right price to the right person. And the reason is because you've already paid for the install, either through ads or they found you organically. and it's best for you to recoup at least any amount of that investment that you can. So if you paid $5 for the install, for example, and the user's only willing to pay $1 or they won't pay at all, you may as well take the $1, right? Because you already paid for the install. Again, this is considering in a vacuum where, you know, users don't communicate with each other and all that stuff. But the general principle is with software businesses, there is no cost to actually, like, there's no variable costs. So it doesn't cost you anymore to have 3 installs versus, you know, 1 install. So you may as well recoup any amount of the investment you can. Whereas if you're selling books, you know, the book might cost $5 to make, so you wouldn't sell it for 4. And so something that we've been exploring is meeting the user wherever their demand is. So if someone downloaded your app, but they haven't purchased it for a few weeks, maybe show them a cheaper price. If you have areas that are low, like they have low conversion rates, show cheaper pricing there. That's like something that anyone who localizes their app will tell you, that they show different prices in, you know, in China and in India and in Europe than they do in the States. So there is some like geographic pricing strategies that you can do. Again, giving discounts over time and offering a web checkout experience, probably through RevenueCat and Stripe. Usually you could split the difference with the user because Apple doesn't take a cut. And that's a great way to drive the price down. But the key takeaway here is you should be giving discounts to your users over time. That's like easily a 20 to 30% price increase in revenue by doing that. Other things to test. You want to test huge price jumps versus small ones. So if you're charging $29.99 a year, don't test that against $39.99 a year. It probably wouldn't be that significant. You should test it against $90 a year and $140 a year. I know it sounds crazy, but it's your job to figure out how you can generate the most revenue. And then again, nothing is stopping you from charging $60 a year on day one and then offering discounts throughout the lifetime of the user. And I'll show you guys later how to do that with you know, my favorite setup and the best tools to use. Another good one is offering lifetime value at 1.5 to 2x your LTV. This is great because it, I mean, Calm famously does this at like, I think $300 or $400 to unlock it forever. Something to worth testing. Definitely offer sales. So Black Friday, Christmas, you know, Mother's Day, Father's Day, all those good things. And again, notification reminders, testing different trial links, and don't forget to track your refunds. This is huge. You might move to a 3-day trial from a 7-day trial and jack your price up, only to realize that all of your gravy is being lost to refunds because people are unhappy. So keep an eye on that. Another tip: only offer free trials on annual products. That pushes people towards the annual subscription. And you do want to test showing like multiple options, like 1, 2, and 3 products, but it's really tough to figure out LTV on the paywall and on each specific product. So many times one annual product does best. It's the best way to gauge what is the demand for this product. Just showing one product, so whether it's annual or monthly. Makes sense?
Yeah, that's something I really liked on that paywall that you showed us for Fitness AI, is that you just had the single like start free trial button. And, you know, in my apps and a lot of apps, there's like, you know, the annual will be highlighted, but then you will have the monthly and the lifetime available as options. And imagine like in paywalls, like further down the funnel, you might show that. But for that first paywall they see, just taking away the decision seems like a really great win. I mean, is that how you would typically approach it, is to go ahead and in most situations just show a single call to action, and then maybe in other situations where there's maybe lower intent or you're offering a discount, then you kind of give them more options to kind of meet them where they're at?
Exactly. It's never clear cut. So we recommend at least starting with just one annual product, because it's a really quick way to figure out what is your LTV, right? So if you're offering a weekly product or a monthly product, you won't know what your LTV is for around 6 months. at least with annual, you can say that the revenue you're getting on day one from this annual product, that's a floor on what your LTV is. Once you've established that, then you can start adding multiple products and tracking those LTVs over time and looking at what their retention is. But it only makes sense if you have somewhere like some sort of baseline on LTV, and the quickest way to get there is with one annual product. And again, there are many options here. So, like for example, here's Planta's paywall. It's not templating right because I'm just opening up in a browser. There's just one button that says subscribe, but they have the other plans button.
Right.
Not many people do the other plans though.
Yeah.
But this is a great way to capture that person who isn't willing to pay, $100 up front for the year. They will see that other plans button, but if you are willing, it kind of just, it fades away.
Yeah.
And you don't really see it. There are, obviously if you're a really good product and you retain really well, the product that will probably win is a monthly or a weekly product because you have a really long tail of revenue that you're missing out on. But again, another approach is you should think of it as planting seeds. So like something I did in Fitness AI a lot is I'll choose 1 month out of the year to just show tons of products to random people. So some people would see only $2.99 a week. Some people would see, $9.99 a month. Basically plant seeds, and then that same time next year, go back and see what happened. So only show those options for a month, then go back to your winning option, and then look at that cohort over time to see which product is generating the most revenue and so forth. Again, you need a lot of skill though to be able to pull that off, or you need to leave the experiment running for a long time. That's something we see too, that people underestimate. They don't understand statistical significance, and it leads to so many. Like experiments can flip-flop so many times.
Yeah. That's great advice. I especially love that other plans button. That's a really great way to kind of offer an offboarding, like an alternate choice, but in a subtle enough way that only people who are looking for another choice are going to see it, rather than always showing all the choices. Yeah, totally. That's really fantastic.
Another great idea that I love, I haven't seen it much in the wild, but Fitness AI does this, is even though our paywall only shows one annual option, with the $90 a year, this, by the way, isn't the paywall that Apple approved. This isn't what's live. It says, usually it says subscribe, like start 7 days free, then $89.99 a year right over here. Right. The best thing I've done that I really like is users can only subscribe to the $90 a year option, but they're 7 days free, right? So a lot of people think, I'm not really down to pay $90 a year, but it's 7 days for free. At least I'll give it a shot. Let's say at the end of their trial, they feel like they'd rather pay monthly or weekly. When they go to cancel their subscription inside of Apple, inside of this subscription group is another option that's $15 a month. But there's no way to actually subscribe to that from within Fitness AI. You could only see that if you're going to cancel.
Oh, that's smart.
And around 15% of our revenue is on that product, which is pretty substantial. That's like total, like a win back campaign that everyone gets for free.
Yeah. So this is something, I've talked with other developers about, because people are like, well, if I'm experimenting with pricing, people are going to go to this page when they go to cancel or manage their subscription or whatever, and they're going to see these other prices. Like, I don't want them to see these other prices. What if they pick a cheaper plan? And what I tell people is like, why not? Like, why not let them see because in some ways it's like kind of a marketing and user psychology thing. Is like, if somebody feels like they're getting a good deal by kind of like working the system and like getting this cheaper price by going to cancel, it's kind of like a built-in win back campaign.
Absolutely.
And like, if they're and to me, it's also, it's a good place to do it in some ways, because, and I hadn't thought of doing it in this way that you're talking about, like creating a specific subscription group with just these two specific things in it. But it's a perfect time because they have the option to cancel. Like, they're right there with the cancel button in front of them. So you're not like tricking them. You're not using dark patterns. But if they still have intent, if they still want the app, you're giving them an opportunity to continue paying in a way that's more convenient for them. So it's like the perfect way to do that. That's like, I absolutely love that.
And own up to it too. Like make the product, like call it like Easter egg pricing, like surprise. So when they're going to cancel, they like, it catches their eye and they realize they found something. Maybe they'll share that with a friend.
Yeah. It's like if people are telling all their friends, hey, sign up for the $99 a year and then go to cancel, and you'll find this like $15 a month plan or $10 a month. Or, I mean, you could even make it a better deal. Like you said before, like, give them better pricing. If they're telling their friends, it's like, great.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay. Fourth is visuals. So which visuals work best? Charts and visuals, what they do is they convey meaning as to what you're offering, how your trial works. It's like the famous, a picture says 1,000 words or whatever, maybe 1,000,000. But yeah, a video is
worth
definitely
1,000 words. And
a video is worth
more.
a few billion. So we've seen much higher impact from people adding videos to their paywalls than the free trial timeline. Also, what a lot of people don't realize, they don't realize the process in which Blinkist found the free trial timeline. The way they got there is by adding an exit survey. So if you saw your paywall, if you saw the paywall and you X'd it out, they would ask you, why didn't you just start your trial? It's free. Why wouldn't you start it? And for them, the biggest response was, I didn't know when I would be charged. And so that's why the free trial timeline works for them. In apps where the free trial timeline doesn't work, it's likely because users aren't confused about when they'll be charged. But the real lesson here is exit surveys. That's the real lesson. So listen to your users, understand why they aren't converting, produce a video to help show them why, or produce a chart or a visual that helps convey meaning. Something that we barely see in apps that do great are Q&A sections. There's a reason why like web paywalls have Q&A sections. I don't know why many apps don't do that. Another one is live support. So on Fitness AI's paywall, you can tap help and message us. Someone once told me, if your support team isn't paying for itself, then you're doing something wrong. Like, you're a business, you provide solutions. And so if someone's coming to you with a problem, you should probably find a solution to sell them. So definitely adding live support is a good, it's a good investment. And try to pull in real reviews from the App Store. You can use the App Figures API. You can use a web view to pull live reviews and show users what real people are saying. Another thing for reviews, make sure there's always a name and a date. Otherwise, people smell bullshit.
Yeah, great tip.
So videos build trust. Here's the before and after for an 80% increase in conversion, and I think a 50 to 100% increase in revenue. It just shows what the app does. It doesn't even, there's no audio, there's no text even. If you have trouble building something like this, you can do it yourself with an app called Rotato. They basically let you just take a screen recording and drag it into a 3D model of a phone, and it like creates these really cool animations for you. So some tips for visuals. While some designs are for sure game changing, like the Blinkist timeline or like a video, well-written text without any graphics can usually outperform like Calm. So you have to assume Calm at least tested everything. So hopefully in their experiment, their plain text did better. Make use of checklists in big fonts. This is like a big mistake we see people do all the time. The purchase button should be the only colored button on your screen. So like, you shouldn't do something like this on the left, and you should most definitely opt for something on the right. There's a famous UX experiment where they did, I hate quoting experiments without knowing the source, but they wanted to see if a red button, a blue button, or a yellow button did better. And they found that for each brand it's different, but by far something better than choosing your best color is making sure that the CTA button is actually the only colored element. That's where you get your biggest boost from.
That's amazing.
Okay, lastly is the copy. This is really, really important because it's the cheapest thing to change. So whether you use Superwall or have some fancy paywall setup, everyone has access to remote config for free. Everyone who uses remote config can change the text on their paywall. It's free, it's easy, and there's a huge boost that you can gain from it. So if you're advertising, test the same messaging as your top performing ads. If you don't know where to start, look at your best reviews that people leave you on the App Store. That is literally, in a user's words, why they love your app. Use that in your advertising. Keep in mind that humans are emotional decision makers. At least like there's the fast part of your brain and the slow part of your brain. The fast part doesn't work the way the slow part works, meaning it makes quicker decisions based on different metrics and emotions. And the reason building a paywall or writing copy is so counterintuitive is because when you're building the paywall, you're using the slow part of your brain. So you're trying to say, look how worth it this thing is. Like, look at all this thought you could put into figuring out why, fitness AI makes more sense than a personal trainer. The truth is that doesn't work. What works is selling the outcome of you're going to look your best and feel your best. And you're going to save so much time so that you don't have to spend that much time at the gym. That works much better than this is 20 times cheaper than a trainer. And we use AI to figure out how many sets, reps, and weight you should lift. Those are features, not outcomes, right? So sell the outcomes. Go a step further and tell the user how the outcome will make them feel, right? So like boost your confidence with a nice smile, right? That's the toothpaste. I don't know if it's Colgate or whoever it is. It's not like, 3x whiter teeth with brushing in half the time. It's build confidence with a nicer smile. And again, social proof always does great. So if you can figure out a way to hack it to show reviews on your paywall, live reviews, that goes a long way. So again, copy is the first thing you should test. And at the very least, make use of checklists and big fonts to keep your biggest ideas in those places. Any questions on copy?
No, that's great.
Alrighty. So for a 2 to 2.5x increase in your revenue, optimize your placement, your features, your pricing, your visuals, and your copy. We've seen it work on apps all over the place in every category. There is no exception. There are tons of possibilities. There's a lot to test. Brace yourself. It's not easy, right? If only there was a platform that let you test and iterate on your paywalls remotely. So that's Superwall. That's exactly what we built. We're very early on in our journey, but we're getting there, and it'd be great to have amazing apps to work for, honestly, and in getting them to a higher revenue.
Yeah, I got to tell you, Jake, I'm sold on Super. I've seen I'll just give like very live reactions here. I've seen your product. You and I have had like conversations on Twitter and privately about paywalls and how important they are and stuff like that. And like this conversation today has changed my mind on a lot of things. And I'm excited to try these in my own apps because you're exactly right about like so many of the things that I've gotten wrong over the years. Like I'm that app that only 20% of users see the paywall. I'm not sure. I made a huge mistake in my Launch Center Pro app a while back where they didn't see the paywall in the onboarding. It set these expectations that the app was completely free. And then I pissed a lot of people off because I put the paywall after they had already done a bunch of work. And it was just a terrible user experience where if I would have put it in the onboarding or even the first thing, it at least sets the expectation like, okay, I'm going to use this app, but at some point I might need to pay. And not even showing the paywall ends up being a worse experience when they do get to the paywall versus like giving them some idea that like there are going to be paid features. So like I've made every mistake in the book and going through this presentation and then thinking about like doing some of this in my own app, like, yeah, you got a new customer today.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. Go ahead.
We're building out free paywalls for everyone who signs up. We have someone full-time making paywalls now.
Oh, wow.
We're including all the best practices that we learned from designing literally hundreds of paywalls and running hundreds of tests. And we'd love to see Launch Center Pro in there. Go free paywall.
All right. And then we are running short on time, so we need to speed run this so we have time for questions. But
for sure,
you did show me this amazing diagram that you just wrapped up to kind of show the kind of full workflow. And so I'd love for you to just speed run us through this real quick, and then we'll move on to questions.
For sure. I'll share this graphic also with you and on Twitter so that because there's a lot to digest here. This is the best flow that we've ever seen. We haven't seen any app do all of this. We've seen some apps do part of this. This is basically our roadmap at Superwall. So up top, you see how people can find you, either on Google through some sort of performance marketing like Facebook ads, or organically on the App Store. This shows you exactly like what APIs you need to build for what layers, what you should be able to remotely control. But like you could see this as like a gold standard of something to iterate towards. So like, for example, on app install, you want to go right to a video app paywall. After that, you want to get push notification access. Then you want to go through onboarding. Ideally, you have your onboarding questions data-driven by your API so that your web onboarding is the same. After that, you collect your email, sign up complete. Now, if you're on the app side, you show them the paywall again after onboarding. If there's a trial start, the app is unlocked and you're good to go. If there's no conversion, they should enter a drip campaign. The drip campaign should send push notifications if the app is installed to get to an app open up back to the paywall. If they signed up on the web and you collected their email, but they dropped off, they also enter this drip campaign. They get emails. Now, emails always go to the web paywall. So even if you downloaded via the app, if you don't convert, you enter this drip campaign. Push notifications open up to the app paywall. Emails open up to the web paywall, right? If there's a trial start, you can see what there's a whole workflow of what you need to build. For your drip campaigns, this is like very confusing for tons of people to set up. You have two options mainly. One is to use intercom, which is super expensive, but it pays for itself. If you do it right, I promise it pays for itself. The other option is you could use customer.io to sort of design flowcharts like this. And then you can integrate with Firebase for push notifications and Segment for emails. And this is sort of the stack that we recommend.
I love this soon.
Soon, yes.
Superwall will do it all.
Soon. Besides, we're not masochists like you guys at Revenue.
Somebody's got to build the basement and the foundation of it all.
Someone's got to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, that's fantastic, and I feel like we could do a whole nother webinar just talking through this through that diagram right there. So maybe we'll have you back in the summer as it's more fleshed out, and it'd be especially interesting too to start between Superwall and Revenue Cap. We have a ton of data, and we now have a data scientist and are working on data projects where we can share more. But it'd be super interesting to be able to look at some of those flows and like have some kind of range of percentage target, but then also look at kind of like the whole life cycle. Like some people are going to have lower trial starts, but higher trial conversions. Some people are going to have high trial conversions, but then low retention. And so, over time, we'd love to work with you on some data projects to kind of show that whole life cycle and give some, sense of what you should be shooting for in those ranges.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, let's go ahead.
That's something that the industry is missing. Like there's so many amazing indies who like open source their metrics. Curtis does this all the time. Zach Shaked does this all the time. It's so much easier to run a race when you know where the finish line is.
Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'd love to work on that with you guys.
Awesome. Well, let's jump into questions then.
For sure.
So we've got quite a few. We'll try and get through them all. And I don't know if you have a hard out. I can maybe take some of these questions and go past the hour if we need to.
I can too.
All right. So starting with Jake, for the drip campaign, should we send both a push notification and an email if they have both enabled, or should we prioritize push notifications over email?
Both. Fitness AI used to send an email every single time you viewed the paywall. So every time you viewed the paywall, we would say like, hey, just realized you opened Fitness AI. Like, don't subscribe there. We have a sale on our website. Check it out. Nice. People are like, oh, wow, this guy's so nice. You know, like, why would he be messaging me about a sale?
Right.
So
that's a great tip. Let's see. Oh, I think I was ordering them in reverse order. Let's see. I'll just kind of go random now. From Eddie, how valuable do you find email campaigns with web paywalls in terms of percentage?
It's higher than you'd think. Fitness AI gets like a 20 to 30% open rate on those emails and a few percent subscribe. But again, your trial to conversion on Stripe is much higher, and obviously you take the whole pay rate. So it would, for Fitness AI, that accounted for so like it was 2 to 3% of all people who received these emails, right? So that's people who haven't subscribed. So our install to paid rate was like 4 to 5%. So out of that 5%, an additional 2% out of the 5. So it's like 20% relatively of revenue. It's 20% of revenue if you figure it out.
That's great. You know, one thing, as a lot of people talk more and more about, using Stripe and avoiding the Apple tax and everything like that. You know, I've talked to some developers who are like, oh yeah, our paywall on the web converts amazingly well. Like it's way better than in-app. And then I kind of follow up and ask more questions. And what you come to realize is that they're sending like super high intent users there with an incentive of like a discount or otherwise. And so it's hard to compare apples to apples when you have your in-app paywall that doesn't have that same level of intent and you're not offering a sale or whatever. But these retention emails is the perfect place to send people to the web because you can offer the discount. It is going to be higher intent. If they actually open the email, you're going to offer them a discount for going to the web. And so it's like you stack all this intent on top of each other. So of course those campaigns are going to perform really well. If you run an ad and send people directly to the paywall to the web versus running an ad and sending people into the app, that's a whole different experiment that you need to A/B test in isolation against and not include the people that you're sending back to the paywall on the web, where you have all of this kind of intent lined up.
Totally. So much of it is about understanding when the user is intentful, understanding that it's temporary, and capitalizing on it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. All right, Vlad asks, how do you track conversions since SK Ad Network, especially with free trials? That's
is that from paid marketing?
Yeah, I assume so. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you're in the weeds of this. I mean, feel free to say you just, aren't in the weeds in this anymore, but it is, SK Ad Network has been really tricky to work with from a lot of folks I've been talking to. Are you in the weeds on that or no?
I'm not.
Okay.
I used to be pre this whole thing.
Well, Vlad, stay tuned because we are going to do more webinars later this year on this kind of stuff because it's something that does come up a lot. I'm not working with it directly personally, but I've talked to a lot of people who are, and it's challenging. So we'll do another event specifically on that. All right. From Roddy, I tried adding a new monthly subscription to my app, hidden to users, so that I could offer it on certain occasions. But Apple rejected my app because they couldn't find this new in-app purchase. How can we appease Apple? That's a great question.
Oh, you have to add it to your pay. You have to change your pricing to the monthly option. Well, usually you can get an app approved, an IAP approved without pushing it into your app. Like you don't need to push an app update to get an IAP approved. So I would find it pretty rare that they would reject it, especially because you need to get the product approved before you can make the paywall. That's why they make you upload the screenshot. But I mean, Fitness, we have maybe 10 to 15 products in our App Store Connect account. We never had issues with like updates and stuff.
The answer here is probably just to keep trying, like different reviewer, different. Yeah.
Submit it standalone.
Yeah. Upload the screenshot of it being displayed in the app. And then, and like we talked about earlier, like maybe there are some products you don't want to display in the app, but maybe you experiment where it is shown in the app. So you're not like lying to Apple that it's never going to be shown in the app. And maybe experiment with it in a retention paywall or something like that. Totally. All right. Omer asked, does the paywall pre-onboarding scare users away? That's a fantastic question.
If it does, just make your exit button more apparent. Like you can have right under your CTA, just say like, not now. But again, you got to test it. Not if your video is really captivating, not if your paywall is an endless scroller and people can just keep scrolling and learning more about your app. It's a fine line. You got to just test. Yeah. That's I think allowing an easy way out is probably the best thing to do if you're aggressive with the paywall. And again, in this conversation, I'm convinced to be a little more aggressive with my paywalls, but that's exactly what I'm going to do, is make sure that there's an easy out. Generally, when you're setting up experiments like this, you have to the first thing you need to do is accept that you're going to test some things that you're uncomfortable with. But the reason you're doing it is you need to understand what your bounds are. So like an example is show the paywall before onboarding with no exit button, right? That's the most extreme example, right? You'll never have a higher bounce rate, and use that as a baseline, and then make your exit button super obvious and compare the two and try to see if you could find something that you're comfortable with that that leans more towards the number that you're going for. Yeah. All right. Ben asks, what are best practices for paywall design for a subscription mobile app that has two pricing tiers, both with offering monthly and annual subscriptions? Oh, like a light and a pro, or like a pro and like a mega pro mode? I think he's asking more kind of what we talked about earlier, where you have multiple options shown at the same time. Is there a design for showing multiple at the same time that performs well versus just having the single call to action? I like the other plans to show more. I also like the we actually haven't run a test. I think if you have 3 options, horizontal picker does better. If you have 2 options, vertical picker does better. And then also we did run a test on, you have 2 buttons. One of them is buy this product. The other one is buy this product. And then in the other version, you have like a selector where you could choose one of the 2 and then press the bottom button. The one where it's like a radio button and then you press the checkout button, that does better than just having 2 purchase buttons where you just click one to purchase that one. Does that make sense? Yeah. That's great. It's because there's one button. It's easier to understand. The CTA is clearer. Right. All right. Roddy asked, for apps that show a paywall before onboarding, has there been a negative effect on App Store reviews or quick app deletion? I worry that people will see the paywall and then delete the app and leave a 1-star review without even trying the app. People don't leave reviews. Like, it's very rare unless they're furious. Right. I've never run a paywall test that significantly affected the rating of the app. And you know what? It's your job to read the reviews and so if they are leaving bad reviews, then don't do it. Nothing is set in stone. And then ideally, like, I loved in, what was it, like the 3rd or 4th slide, you said, a lot of apps miss out on the last step, which is for retained users.
you want to get them to share, and you want to get them to review. And so imagine, do you send an email follow-up asking for reviews specifically?
Not sort of. So this is sort of the best way that I found. After they've fully experienced your app. So with Fitness AI, it's after your 5th workout. An example would be after photo room. If you've exported a photo 3 or 4 times, send the user an email. It's not intrusive. Ask them first off, ask them if they love your product. Then ask them how disappointed they'd be if they could no longer use your product. It's like a famous product market fit survey that the founder of Superhuman spearheaded, or made popular. And then here's what you do: if they say that they love your product, you should ask them, what do you love most about it? If they don't like your product, ask them what they hate most about your product. Now, for the users who say that they love your product and they wrote feedback for you, after the survey, show them what they wrote and say, hey, it'd mean the world to us if you pasted this into the App Store. And so you sort of trick them into writing a review without knowing, and now it's like, I just wrote this whole review. I may as well go paste it on the App Store.
That's great. And
yeah,
so Apple specifically has stuff in the rules against like filtering people before you send them to do a review, which I get, but I now take screenshots of apps that do this. And so many apps do this. Just in the last week, I took screenshots of realtor.com. They have this like smiley face and a frowning face. And do you like our app? Yes or no? I clicked yes. And I saw the like native prompt. So it's like one of those things that like, yes, it's a written rule. And like still in my apps, I don't do the pre-filtering, but like everybody does it. And I don't know if Apple's just going to eventually like change the rule or something like that, but like they're obviously not enforcing it. And it's a great way to get good reviews. I mean, it really does work. And then part of what I was asking about like getting more reviews is that at some point, like with my weather app, it's 4.5 stars. It's got like 11,000 reviews now, or somewhere in the close to 10,000 reviews. And once you kind of hit a critical mass of good reviews, it's really hard to bring that average back down. And so if you're watching these, so if you make a change and you do get a few negative reviews, you want to watch that. But if it's like 3 negative reviews over the course of months, it's not going to impact your overall ratings, especially if you're doing what you need. If you have a great product and you're doing what you need to do to get good reviews and you have a critical mass of reviews, then you can like experiment with being a little less worried about the impact of these negative reviews. Because I remember early on, it's like when you only have like, 500 reviews, well, yeah, like 10 1-star reviews can bring it down. I don't know if a point, I can't do the math on that in my head, but it's like any shift in that is going to hit you harder early on. But once you've reached a critical mass, you can experiment a little more freely and address the problems that come up and that are brought up in the reviews, but you don't have to be quite as like fearful of them. So
totally. I think Apple should change it and you should show a rating based on your last 10,000. Because right now, every review matters less than the one before it. Right. It's like kind of weird,
Yeah. I don't know though, because I mean, they used to do that. So back in the early days of the App Store, every time you submitted, every time you submitted a new update, it would like wipe out your reviews and it would start over again. And that was really tough. So it's kind of changed over time, and that's where I feel like in some ways a great product that amasses a large number of good reviews, then ideally that's what you build up. And so then I don't like the rolling idea because then it's more sensitive to these kind of experiments. And it's like, like with my Weather Up app, we're going to release a big update this summer, and it's some big changes to the app, and like those kind of things. I'm a little worried we'll get some negative reviews, but with thousands of reviews and 4.5 stars, like I know it's not going to be enough to just like totally tank it. So so that really does help. All right, Brendan asks for for blah, 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 blah. For productivity apps, is it better to go with just annual pricing or both annual and monthly? And what about a higher one-time pay option as well? Yeah, I'm curious. So we kind of addressed some of this as we were talking through it about, offering the monthly just in settings, and like, there's a lot of stuff we already did talk about. But you didn't talk much about your thoughts on lifetime option. I've really gone back and forth on this. What do you think about lifetime purchases?
So I just put this link in the chat. It's a book I'm in the middle of. It's called Priceless. It's about, Thinking Fast and Slow, the book. So Priceless is a book on how behavioral decision theory comes into play when deciding if something is worth it. So should I buy this computer or should I buy? Apple is famous for doing this so well. They have products that are perfectly priced in between specific models that just push you over the edge to buy the more expensive model.
Right.
I think lifetime can serve a similar purpose. So for example, if Fitness AI offered you lifetime access for $1,000 or annual access for $49.99 a year, people are like, oh, it's obvious. The annual is the move. Why would I pay $1,000 lifetime when it's $50 a year? But it also conveys that, like, wow, I can't believe that's an option. Like, do people subscribe to that? Like, do people actually stick to this for 20 years? Like, that's insane. And so it's the thing. It's kind of something like you can have theories, but you don't know. There's no way to like systematically prove it. So you got to just test it. So you test again, set the bounds, your extremes. So test $50 a year versus $1,000 lifetime, and then test $50 a year versus $60 lifetime. And you'll see.
Yeah.
You'll see.
The two things that I think a lot about with lifetime and have talked about recently is one, sometimes you're kind of putting your best users there, like your highest intent users who may actually stay subscribed for 10 years, 20 years. You're giving them this off ramp to actually pay you way less money, even though they're the ones who are actually going to experience the most value. And then two, it's like, you could say, okay, I price this at 3 times my lifetime value, but do you really even know your lifetime value at this point? Because over time, we know that the longer somebody stays subscribed, the less likely they are to churn. And so you can calculate your LTV today, but maybe in 3 years, you realize so much of some of your early cohorts are still around, and your LTV is actually 2-3 times as much. And so you're really kind of shortchanging yourself when you're building a product that's going to be valuable for 10, 20 years. We're with subscription apps, we're just now getting to that point of having, 5 and 10 year cohorts with some of these very early subscription apps. But then you look at things like Netflix. I mean, I subscribed when it was still DVDs in like the early 2000s, and I'm still subscribed. It's probably been close to 20 years. So I think that's another thing I think a lot about is like, we don't really even know lifetime values. We know we can calculate on a shorter time horizon what the lifetime values are, but as you stack those like retentive cohorts, your true lifetime value could be way higher than like what you're currently calculating it at.
Totally. Yeah. People don't realize that LTV it's an average.
Yeah.
It's not a measure of central tendency. You don't know where most of your users fall. So some people are generating 3 to 4x your LTV. Some users are canceling after a month. And when you introduce a lifetime, like most people, they think they're so smart, and they, like me, I've tried this. They just say, oh, my LTV is $120. I'll add a lifetime offering for $150. How could my LTV go down? Well, the answer is the people who are subscribing to the $150 one-time fee are the ones who would have stayed for 5 years. Right. And so their LTV is much higher.
Right.
So a lot of times it brings your LTV down.
Yeah.
I would use it more for price anchoring.
Yeah, I feel like, so today we actually just released LTV charts in Revenue Cat, which we're super excited about. Yeah. You should go check it out. But I feel like LTV is something we could just have like a 2-hour conversation on, because like, how do you, like you have to kind of set certain parameters to determine it. Predicting LTV is incredibly hard. The whole like subscription, what do you call it? The decay of churn is so fascinating, and understanding those curves, so that the longer somebody stays subscribed, the longer they're gonna stay subscribed. Like, so much of that is so fascinating. So we'll move on, but we'll put a pin in that. And you and I need to chat more about LTV. It's such a fascinating topic.
Totally.
All right, Zach Shaked, good friend of Jake's and of Revenue Cat. How powerful is it to remove the free tier of an app and make the entire thing require a subscription? Why is that more valuable?
It depends. So if you're freemium, we just had a customer who they do like 300 to 400K in revenue a month. They have a freemium model, so half their power features you have to pay for. Their other features you get for free. They tested free trial versus not free trial, and no free trial did better, I believe. For apps up front, I mean, it depends on the category. You got to just test whether locking it out or free trial does better.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just depends. But usually I think free trial does better, at least if you're going to show it really early in the onboarding.
Gotcha. By the way, I did switch the questions to sort by upvote. So upvote any questions you definitely want us to hit, because we are going to need to wrap up fairly soon. So I'm just going to continue answering them in order of upvotes. All right, I'm not going to try to pronounce your name. I should probably just not use names because I always run into some. But this is a great question. When do you know how you've gotten to a point where you're getting diminishing returns from optimizing the paywall, and that you should focus on core app value? Yeah, balancing engineering resources. That's such a tough thing, especially like early on. It's like there's so much that needs to be done in the core product, and ultimately having a really great product is how you're going to build your business. So how do you balance such scarce, precious resources on this optimization versus like product optimization?
The way I ran it is I would work on product. I'd release a new feature. I'd see if my retention changed. If it didn't, or if it did, I would at some point, you're like, oh, well, are people even subscribing to even see this new feature? And then you sort of focus on the paywall, and then revenue goes up, and then you work on product. And so it's a balancing act.
Yeah.
It's
Maybe do it in
very
kind of sprints.
sort of, it's not like, it's like mining for oil. Most times you find nothing. Sometimes you become a billionaire,
Right.
like look at Blinkist. 8 years into Blinkist, they found the free trial timeline. 2 years into, literally, I mean, I spent way more time than I should have optimizing our paywall. Took me 3 years to realize I started the wrong company. But like 2 years in, we found out that videos do better.
Right.
And so it's hard to know, but
Yeah.
at least devote some resources to it.
Yeah. Cool. None of your business asks, Superwall seems like breaking Apple's guidelines, remotely changing paywall, a very regulated part of the app. Any comment? That's a good question. It's a sticky, some of these things that we've talked about are sticking points with Apple. Like Apple is sensitive to like price discrimination. And like you've talked about offering discounts, which I think is in their view, like a good way to run your business. But I think where they get especially sensitive on price discrimination is like what Tinder did, like charging women less and charging men more, and like
that's
discriminating. Discriminating versus on those kind of things. And then I think on the pricing as well, there's also like, as you grow, like Netflix would have a really hard time doing some of these like more crazy price experiments, because people will talk and know. But when you're still doing 100 to 300K a month, like you're not a household brand where it's going to be a topic of discussion. And maybe that's why you do it at that time and do some dramatic tests at that time. And then you kind of more settle in on things. But yeah, back to the original question, like,
For sure.
yeah, what are your thoughts on being able to remotely configure this and staying within Apple's guidelines? Because and one thing to note, they do go back and re-review apps now. So they look at live apps on the App Store post-app review. I don't know what frequency, I don't know what triggers a re-review, but it's been clear for a while now that they are re-reviewing apps. So if you're changing your paywall dramatically, you might get caught. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But yeah, I'll let you answer the rest of that, Jake.
For sure. Well, first of all, there's like a question of if something is legal, is it ethical? If something's illegal,
Right.
is it unethical? That's not the case. Ethics is separate from legality. That's why I think it's ethical to ask a user who likes your app for a review, even if it's against Apple guidelines. Obviously, there's a risk because you're playing someone else's game, and they can, throw you out. So there's a dance there, and you have to be smart. In terms of, it's the classic: with great power comes great responsibility. People can do this anyway without Superwall. The New York Times paywall is a web view. If you check it out, like they update it. Half the time on the New York Times, they take you to their web checkout on their website. Like no one even knows, they don't even know what they're doing. Like someone who doesn't even realize that, but whatever. So yeah, you have to be careful. You have to be, you can't be an asshole. You can't circumvent Apple. You'll get caught.
I think the key in what you just said, and this should just apply to all things, because like you said, it's like, you could, swizzle private APIs. You can, like, there's so many things that you can do that are against Apple's rules that you can get away with. And a lot of apps do. The key is the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law.
Right.
Like, why does Apple say, don't change your paywall? Because people do things with their paywall that are against the rules and are dark patterns and are tricking people into subscriptions. So if you are changing your paywall remotely, I don't think that's technically against the rules to change your paywall remotely.
Remote code execution is not allowed. So like remotely, yeah.
But remotely configuring and like changing, they had to make peace with aspects of that. So, but the point being is, like, if you're going to do these experiments, just don't do an experiment that uses a dark pattern. Don't continue following the rules and experiment within the rules. And if Apple catches you doing something that is a dark pattern, you could face consequences. You could be pulled from the App Store or whatever. So yeah, I think that's the best way to frame it is, yeah, exactly. It's like, play within the rules ethically, even if it's not always perfectly to the letter of the law, because so much of this stuff, again, it's like, realtor.com, a multi-billion-dollar business, is doing something that's like against the letter of the law, and Apple doesn't seem to be policing it. And like, I don't know, this is such a tricky subject. I think it's like, you have to decide with your own app, like how you're going to run it, and then what risks you're willing to take against that. And breaking Apple's rules.
Uber used to be illegal.
Yeah.
Getting into an Uber was illegal.
Yeah. So anyways, yeah, got to make your own decisions there. But I think, just be ethical, like do what's best for users. And then, and that's what I've seen over and over again is like, if it comes up and you're actually doing something good for business, good for users, like, Apple's not going to hassle you. If you're doing something that's a dark pattern, yeah, they're going to hassle you. So like, that's where, if you draw your line there, that's the most important thing.
And by the way, Fitness AI once pushed a paywall that Apple didn't like, that made it through review. And we went through that re-review process. They just messaged me and said, the paywall isn't compliant. You have to change it.
Right.
I uploaded a new build. They said they still didn't like it. I uploaded it again, and they liked it, and that was fine. So it's not like no one's being put into app jail for this, besides Fortnite, of course.
Yeah, and that's a good point too. Is that what you can do is is submit various paywalls with new uploads. Like if you are experimenting with your paywalls, submit some of your variations as the active paywall when you submit it, and you'll get Apple's feedback on it. And if they say it's not okay, then stop using that as an experiment. All right. Next question. Do you see a difference in optimizing for iOS versus Android, perhaps on different characteristics of the user base?
We don't have Android client libraries yet, so I couldn't tell you.
Okay. Android is really tricky. I mean, I've talked to a lot of folks about Android. I mean, we see it with Revenue Cat. So many of our customers say it. It's most apps make the majority of their money on iOS. Even like Curtis Herbert, we had him on the Sub Club podcast recently, and he talked about, like, he just recently on Twitter, he's put a ton of money into Android, and he gets all these complaints of like, oh, there's not feature parity or whatever. Well, like, he hasn't even recouped a quarter of the cost to just get it to where it is. Yeah, and Android's a tough one. So yeah, I wish we had a better answer for you, but yeah. just know that whatever you do, just the demographics on Android are different. The willingness to pay is different. The expectations are different. Probably even where you should price is different on Android. But it also kind of depends. Like, Android in the US is a different demographic than like Android in Spain. It's like, in Spain, it's way more common to be on Android. And so the financial demographics and other demographics of the people in certain countries on Android are going to look different than the US. And so if you're talking just about the US, that's going to look really different than a lot of European countries, than developing countries and otherwise. So there's probably not an easy answer to this anyways. But
I think a good way to think about the two users are, like, if you were to compare an iPhone to an Android phone only on paper, right? So looking at price, screen size, what actual features there are, Android wins, in my opinion, right? Yet everyone in this country chooses an iPhone, at least most of the money, the spenders. And so why would they buy an iPhone if on paper it looks worse? And I think it's because they care about, like, they're emotional decision makers. I think it's because they want the shiny, nice Apple product that works well, and they don't care if it doesn't have these individual features. People on Android, they do care about those individual features. And so for sure the pitch changes, but it's definitely easier to sell to that category of people who don't care about individual features. These are people who don't care about the thread count on their sheets. They just want, that's like, those are iPhone users.
Yeah, that's a great point. Is that when you do start to do these optimizations on Android versus iOS, don't just automatically apply your iOS learnings to Android. You really want to probably message differently, highlight different things. Again, probably even price differently. It's just fundamentally a different market. And then you probably even want to do that. I mean, when you're small, you're not going to have the resource to do this. But ideally, as you grow, you could also do some of that differently country by country, depending on the demographics of Android users versus iOS users. It comes down to just like understanding your users. All right, we still have a bunch of questions. We'll wrap up with maybe 2 or 3 more questions. So if there's one in there that you really want to see answered, go ahead and upvote it now. So let's see. How do you deal with current subscribers when you increase a subscription price? Keep the same price with them, or keep them happy by making them pay the new price?
Well, the way that I
keep the
do
same
it,
price to keep them happy. Yeah, the grandfathering. Yeah.
I don't ever edit the price of a subscription product. I have tons, when I'm running a price test, I have tons of different groups, each one of them with only one product inside of it. And if a new one wins, I just show that product, but people on the old product continue to pay that one. It's the same product ID. It's too hard to keep track of, like, revenue that a specific product generated over time when you're adding the variable that the price of the products can actually change. So better to create a new product with a new price and do it that way. So, and if you go that route, they'll always be grandfathered in because you're never changing the price for a specific product.
And then I'll expand on that answer. Currently, if you raise the price, it it is an automatic opt out for anybody you raise the price on. So I would always advise to grandfather people in, because you're just creating automatic churn from your user base, because they have to open the app, they have to see the price increase, they have to agree to the price increase in order to continue the subscription. But Apple is piloting a program with Disney Plus, and maybe they'll roll this out to more developers. I don't know if they'll do it just for like streaming platforms, or have certain requirements or whatever. But hopefully they're going to roll this out beyond just Disney Plus. And so with this new flow, the users are automatically opted in to the price increase. And all they see is like if you search on TechCrunch, search like Apple Disney Plus price increase. Sarah Perez did a post on this and got Apple to confirm, and I helped her get some of the data. Is that on the Disney Plus, there's just an OK button, and subscribers are automatically opted into the new price. So if Apple rolls that out more broadly, I think that is an opportunity to raise your prices in a reasonable way. If you're like doubling your price, like Jake's talking about some pretty big price experimentations of like test $30 and test $60. Well, you do have to think about the experience of users. If you say your $30 subscription is now $60, and one, I don't think Apple's going to allow that. So you wouldn't want to do those kind of price increases. It's a bad user experience. But if it's like you're at 30 and this year you're going to increase it to 35 or something like that, or 60 and you go to 80, you do risk churn by doing that, and you risk annoying people. But at some point, if you're truly delivering value and you're convinced that it's worth it and that people will see the value, I'm hoping Apple rolls this out and we're able to kind of experiment with that more. But it'll be tricky, and it's like this will be like a whole new area of learning. Just like we spent an hour talking about paywalls, like price increases will be tricky, and some apps will see a huge amount of churn. So for now, if you're going to do a price increase, just grandfather the users or create separate SKUs. If Apple rolls this out to everyone, I would even wait and let other people kind of like take the brunt first and like see what the best practices are, see, how big of a price increase Apple's going to allow, figure out, is that worth it? Look at your retention, make sure that you think people are going to stay subscribed. So yeah, a lot to think about there, but for now I would just grandfather people in.
Totally.
All right. Let's get two more questions. I have an app with high installs and retention, but low subscriptions. How risky is it to paywall features that are currently free? That's a great question.
The greatest risk is to take no risk at all. So you got to test it.
Test it. That's a great answer.
Yeah, you got to just test it.
That's an easy one too.
Yeah.
This will be an easy kind of technical question. Are you Flutter compatible with Superwall? Revenue has a Flutter SDK, so yes, but Superwall not yet.
Not yet, no. Our biggest request is React Native, but only for iOS. So we're going to release that soon, and then we'll do the same for Flutter.
Awesome. That was an easy one. All right, one more. Let me make sure I'm getting the highest upvoted one, and then we'll wrap up. Okay. I found it quite difficult to find retention numbers. What retention should you aim for? D1, D7, and D30? Oh,
this is a great question. Most shitty apps, not sorry if I'm offending anyone, they do around 15 to 20% year one retention. I don't know D1, D7, D30, and I'm speaking about paying retention, by the way.
Yeah, that's a tricky thing, a lot of people don't clarify. So, D1, D7, D30 is probably usage retention, but I think for subscription apps, that kind of day one retention is probably less meaningful, because you're you're kind of intentionally filtering to the people who are willing to pay. And so looking at usage, and a lot of the benchmarks that you'll see on the web for D1, D7, D30 are from like games and other apps like that,
Yeah.
where usage retention is the KPI. It's like the metric, whereas subscription apps, and what you're about to talk to, is that subscription retention really should be more of your KPI than usage retention. And an example I love on this is, like, I use Visco, the Visco app. And I only use it when I take photos I really care about. So like when I'm on vacation, when like, doing something fun with the kids or whatever. So I don't necessarily even use it every month, but I am like zero churn risk because I love the app. And when I take pictures I care about, I open Visco, I edit them. I love their filters, so that's where like subscriber retention isn't necessarily even indicated in your usage retention metrics. And you need to understand the difference between your usage metrics and your subscription retention metrics, and look for those patterns like me that aren't necessarily heavy users. You don't necessarily need to incentivize heavy usage in order to drive retention. You need to increase value to drive retention. So now flip to you, and let's talk about some like benchmarks for subscription retention, which is what I think we should be more focused on as subscription apps.
For sure. Well, yeah, first off, I mean, look at gyms. Gyms, only around 20% of their monthly paying customers use the subscription. So only 20% of people who have a gym membership use the gym. So that's definitely the case. Well, of course they're correlated though. But then another thing is iOS makes it so easy to both subscribe to an app and unsubscribe to an app. So like I fall in the category of, I just unsubscribe from stuff when I'm not using it. Like, why not? I haven't used it in a month. I've unsubscribed because I know when I open the app again, I'll probably either get a discount or I could just resubscribe again.
Yeah.
So why not? So yeah, that's for starters. But I know, I think maybe you guys, Revenue Cow would be much better to answer the subscription retention than I would. But I've seen 15 to 20% on the low end. I've seen 30 to 40% from really good apps. And I've like 40, 50, 60% is like so good that it's almost unheard of.
Yeah. And
it's much different from credit card retention. Oh, like for example, our Stripe. So all things constant, our subscriber retention on Stripe for Fitness AI is like 60% year over year. And our annual retention is 30% year over year.
Wow.
And it's easier to cancel if you subscribe on Stripe, because in settings, we show you like a manage your subscription and you can just cancel within the app. So I can't explain why.
Well, I mean, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, potentially, is that you're driving some of the more high intent users, and you're like the people on the Stripe subscription probably have a bigger discount. They're scared they're going to lose the discount and have to pay full price. Maybe. Like there's probably some kind of like built-in retention hooks. And that's why it's a good idea to go ahead and send your higher intent users with a discount to the web. Because you're going to create that kind of lock-in that they don't want to lose this great deal that they got, and maybe they are your higher intent users anyway. But then to answer this and another question, and we'll wrap up with this, we are going to release benchmarks at some point in 2022. It's something I've wanted to do since I joined Revenue Cat in 2019. It's tricky though, and one of the things I'm thinking a lot about is how we can actually display life cycle benchmarks versus individual benchmarks. And we've kind of talked about this through the whole conversation today, is that just because you have a high install to trial start doesn't necessarily follow that you're going to have a high trial start to trial conversion, which doesn't necessarily follow that you're going to have a high trial conversion to retention. And so there's like this entire user life cycle from opening the app to, like year 5 retention. And what I anticipate seeing in the data and hope to find a way to visualize is that even great apps are going to look different. So like maybe the average trial start rate is 8%, but you could have a fantastic app where the trial start rate's only 5%, but then their conversion rate's like 90%, and then their retention is incredible. And so if you,
like Strava.
Yeah.
Strava
so
falls on one end of that.
If you only look at each of these kind of lifestyle metrics in isolation, even if you're looking at averages, you're not understanding the swing. So like if you're shooting for like, I got to get a 10% trial start rate, or I'm not in the 50th percentile, and then I need to get a 50% trial conversion rate to be in the 50th percentile. Like if you set these individual goals in isolation as your target, you're not necessarily hitting your own kind of global maxima, because you might actually do better, like Jake said earlier, like locking the whole app. So now your trial start rate is going to go way up, but then do your trial conversion rates, do your retention and everything else balance out. And so looking at each of these individually is probably a fool's errand compared to really trying to understand the full life cycle. And that's what, I mean, now I'm setting a super high bar for us, but that's what I hope for us to do when we are able to release these benchmarks, is to try and give a better understanding of the full life cycle versus just benchmarking these in isolation. And then to, complicate that even further, category by category, country by country, those things are going to look different as well. And so if you're looking at it globally blended, that's going to look really different than if you look at just the US, or if you look at just, other countries specifically. So if you see benchmarks out there, take them with a huge grain of salt, because there's a lot of confounding variables. And I hope that we can produce some benchmarks that at least give context around those confounding variables and like try and help you understand the full life cycle instead of just throwing random benchmarks out for each of these individually. So long answer, but hopefully we'll be able to do something meaningful in that area in 2022. Last thing to note, we still have quite a few people here. I do run a private forum for subscription app developers called Subclub. Jake's done AMAs in there, just actually completed one last month. I was trying to figure out, I need to, next time we do the webinar, I'll figure out how to drop a link in earlier in the conversation. But hit me up, David at Revenue Cat, and I'll shoot you a link to the wait list. Somebody at Revenue Cat hopefully heard me and dropped the link in if they had it handy. But otherwise, yep, there we go. Corey just dropped it in the wait list. Thank you, Corey. But yeah, this was fantastic, Jake. Such a so knowledgeable in all this stuff. And again, like, I mean, you really changed my mind on some things today. And I think this was just an incredible exploration of better monetizing. So thank you for your time, and look forward to continue working together.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, and thanks for all the great questions, everybody. Thank you very much.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Take care.